Good morning and welcome to my class. As you can see, today we are on a B schedule. So all of your classes in the morning will be even numbers, and you'll be in second period, fourth period, and sixth period. And of course, every day you have your seventh and eighth period classes. So welcome. I just want to remind you that in this class we do follow the 3 R's. We're respectful to one another, to ourselves, we're responsible, we come prepared, and we are ready to learn. That's the purpose of us being together. Today's bell work will be done on loose leaf paper for the people who are here in person. So those of you in class need 1 sheet of loose leaf paper, and you're going to put your proper heading, name, date, and class in the upper right-hand corner. Those of you at home will do this in Google Docs. So at home, you'll open up a new tab. You'll go ahead and you'll click on your waffle in Google Classroom. And when you click on that waffle, you'll notice that there's a spot that says Google Docs. You'll click on that. You'll find the tool that allows you to have right alignment. You'll click on that, and you'll put your proper heading in the upper right-hand corner. So we've been talking about your favorite types of music, and now I'd like to know, how does your favorite type of music or your favorite genre make you feel after you listen to it? And why do you suppose that it does? So if your favorite type of music is heavy metal, how does that make you feel after you listen to it? If your favorite type of music is country music, how do you feel after listening to it? Maybe it's hip-hop or rap or classical. There's so many different genres. Last week you wrote about which one you prefer, and now you're going to write about how does your favorite genre of music make you feel after you listen to it. We're going to pause here, and I'm going to put on the countdown. And the countdown will help you to keep your eye on the time, 7 minutes. And you'll have a little bit of Disney music to help you with your writing, because you know what they say, some soft music does help when you're composing. So I'm going to hit play. You'll have 7 minutes, and then we'll share our thoughts. Let's make sure it's loud enough to be heard, but not too loud. Okay, we should be finished with our wonderful writing. And now, let's see. Remember your heading. Remember you were answering the writing prompt, how does your favorite genre of music make you feel after you listen to it? And why do you suppose that it does? Of course, spelling, punctuation, and grammar count. And 50 words minimum. So, do a little more, you get a little more. All right. So, we're going to share our thoughts. And before we do, I wanted to read this to you. As you know, we lost a fine actor and a fine person. His name was Chadwick Boseman. He was only 43 years old. And apparently he had been suffering from colon cancer the whole time that he was filming Black Panther and other movies. And this is what he had to say. The struggles along the way are meant to shape you for your purpose. So I guess he felt like he had a purpose. I'm wondering what ours are. So I'm going to pause this and we're going to share our thoughts about music. So I don't know about you, but when I hear those happy Disney songs, or sometimes the sad ones, like that one from Dumbo where the mother's crying about losing her son, it gives me a feeling. So you get a feeling listening to your favorite genre. That's why you've picked it, right? And we talked about how the struggles along the way are meant to shape our purpose. Think about, if you will, that this gentleman was suffering from colon cancer while he was filming some of the best movies that we've seen in a very long time that touched a lot of people's hearts and souls. And he also was spending time with children who also had cancer, giving them a little bit of hope and a whole lot of excitement. So even when life is tough, if you can persevere through it, you'll find that every day is a blessing. And I think that's why when we look at the news and we figure out what's happening in the world, we should try to think about each of the days as a blessing, even when it seems like bad things are happening everywhere. Now, while we're watching CNN 10, I'd like for you to turn in your bell work. Of course, my digital people, you're going to turn it into Google Classroom, and I'll be around to collect from my face-to-face people. So I'm going to pause here so that I can collect from everyone and we can enjoy CNN 10. That was a good CNN 10. And now, hopefully you've turned in your bell work. Those at home typed it, and those in school hand wrote it. Okay? So, as we move on, let's not forget that if you haven't turned in your first day packets and your signed syllabi, please do so. And please note that we do have our PowerPoint, or as they call them, Google Slides, and our essay for our favorite song due on September 3rd or 4th, depending on when I see you. So since I'm seeing you, let's say it's a B day, and I'm seeing you today, that means that yours will be due on Friday. And if I'm seeing you and it is a day, yours will be due on Thursday. And of course, get that pleasure novel. I want you to hold it up in the air so I can see it, okay? Now, I've been asking you a lot about music, And one of the videos that I'd like for us to look at is how music benefits your brain. I'd like for us to see the good things that come from music. And then we're going to watch one that also shows other effects on your brain. So we're going to start with this is your brain on music. And I'm going to make sure that it is loud enough. And put this up here. And please listen to how music affects our brains.
Hi, it's Stacey Abrams.
Of course, it's a commercial. There's a commercial. Here we go.
Music has been an important part of every human culture, both past and present. It can play a part in brain development, learning, mood, and even your health. There used to be a popular belief that music is processed in the right hemisphere of our brains, along with art and other creative activities. However, recent findings show us that music is distributed throughout the brain. Through studies of people with brain damage, we have seen patients who have lost the ability to read a newspaper but can still read music. Or individuals who can play the piano but lack motor coordination to button their own sweater. Today we know that music listening and performance engage nearly every area of the brain that we have so far identified. One of the most common effects music has is that it can alter our mood and feelings by stimulating the formation of certain brain chemicals. Film directors use music to tell us how to feel about scenes that otherwise might be unclear or elevate our feelings at particularly dramatic moments. Think of a typical fight scene in an action film. It's the music that truly makes the scene epic. Also, our brains respond differently to happy and sad melodies. One study showed that after hearing a short piece of sad music, participants were more likely to interpret the neutral expression as sad. And if the melody was happy, the neutral expression was perceived as a happy one. Now, when you listen to music you actually like, your brain releases a neurotransmitter called dopamine. Dopamine is a chemical which causes a feeling of satisfaction. When listening to your favorite part of the song, you'll get the same sort of pleasure that you experience when eating food, doing drugs, or having sex. So basically, music can make us feel good. And if you're having a particularly good day, listening to some of your favorite upbeat music can actually amplify that feeling of happiness. One interesting thing is that when someone is sad, they often reach for sad music, and they find that it helps them feel better. Now you might be thinking, why would they do that? Why wouldn't a sad person listen to happy music? The reason is that when you're sad or depressed, you usually feel misunderstood, like the people around you don't understand you. If you would listen to happy music in this state, it would only contribute to this feeling of detachment. However, if you put on the right piece of sad music, you say to yourself, "Oh, that's how I feel. This musician understands me." So the sad music turns out to be soothing, unlike the happy music when you're feeling down. Another interesting aspect is how listening to music can affect our exercise regime. As our body realizes we are tired and wants to stop exercising, it sends signals to the brain to stop for a break. Listening to music competes for our brain's attention and can help us override those feelings of fatigue. A 2012 study showed that cyclists who listened to music required 7% less oxygen to do the same work as those who cycled in silence. So not only can we push through the pain and exercise longer and harder when we listen to music, but it can actually help us use our energy more efficiently. In the last few decades, neuroscientists have made enormous breakthroughs in understanding how our brains work by monitoring them with instruments like fMRI. So when researchers got the participants to listen to music, they saw multiple regions light up. But what's more interesting is that when they observed brains of musicians while playing an instrument, the whole brain lit up like sky with fireworks. So while listening to music engages some interesting brain regions, playing music is the brain's equivalent of a full body workout. Also, through brain scans, we have found that musicians have different brains than non-musicians. People who play an instrument have bigger, better connected, more sensitive brains. A study from 2008 showed that children who had at least 3 years of instrumental music training performed better than their non-musical counterparts on a variety of tests.
So I pause this to ask you, who among you have learned how to play a musical instrument, and what instrument did you play? So I shall pause our video and find out.
Mainly in auditory discrimination abilities and fine motor skills. But they also tested better on vocabulary and non-verbal reasoning skills, which involve understanding and analyzing visual information, such as identifying relationships, similarities and differences between shapes and patterns. These two areas in particular are quite removed from musical training as we imagine it, so it's fascinating to see how learning to play an instrument can help kids develop such a wide variety of important skills. It's also never too late to start learning an instrument. Seniors who play an instrument or sing with other people are more resistant to cognitive and memory problems. The reason might be the creation of alternative connections in the brain that could compensate for the cognitive decline as we get older. So both listening and creating music has its own benefits. However, music affects each brain differently, and someone's music can be another person's noise. And researchers have found that listening to music you like increases blood flow to the brain more than listening to music you don't like. To draw a line, you will always get more benefits in listening to music you actually like.
Fascinating and very important. So that's why it's important for us to kind of analyze what kind of music do we like, what is the genre we prefer, and try to listen to it more often, because as you can see, the older you get, the stronger it will keep your brain. Of course, we don't want to be listening to something that disagrees with us and we find unpleasant, because that doesn't help us. But if you're happy, yay. But if you're sad, what kind of music should we listen to? Sad music, because then we're feeling like there are people who know how we're feeling. And of course, exercising the brain is a fantastic thing to do. So that was the first video, and then the second one, which is a little bit longer, talks about the effects of music on our brain as well. Please listen.
You could take your
Of course there's a commercial, even though I thought I went beyond the commercials.
We hear music all the time. It wakes us up, motivates our workouts, keeps us company on our commutes. It doesn't matter what kind of music it is. Music itself has the ability to affect our moods and our bodies in all sorts of ways. We nod our heads, we sway, we dance. Music can give us chills, even make us cry.
Music activates every area of the brain that we have so far mapped. In fact, there's no area of the brain that we know about that music doesn't touch in some way.
But what's behind all that? What exactly does music do to us?
To find out, I went through a whole series of tests designed to measure my responses to music. I met some kids whose brains may actually be changing thanks to those hours of learning, practice, and performing. Spoke with a therapist who used music to help former Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords learn to speak again, and got a glimpse inside the brain of a two-time Grammy-winning artist while he played. All to find out how music affects us. So what's going on when we listen to music? We visited the USC Brain and Creativity Institute, where I had my head examined, literally, to try to figure it out.
I'm going to go into this fMRI machine. A tiny tube will surround me. We'll get a baseline reading of my brain, and then I'm going to listen to some music. I'm going to see how my brain responds.
Just close your eyes, relax, and try and get into the music as best you can, okay?
And here's what we saw. These are scans of my brain. The areas in red are where my activity is above average, in blue below average. And as you can see, there's red activity all over my brain, not just in one specific area.
25 years ago, the idea was that language is in the left side of the brain and music is in the right side of the brain. But now that we've got better quality tools, higher resolution neuroimaging, and better experimental methods, we've discovered that's not at all right.
How does that play out in different regions of the brain?
When music enters and then gets shuttled off to different parts of the brain, it stops at specialized processing units in auditory cortex. They track loudness and pitch and rhythm and timbre and things like that. There's visual cortex activation when you're reading music as a musician or watching music. Motor cortex when you're tapping your feet, snapping your fingers, clapping your hands. The cerebellum, which mediates the emotional responses. The memory system in the hippocampus, hearing a familiar passage, finding it somewhere in your memory banks. Music is going on in both halves of the brain, the left and the right.
That's amazing to realize that our brains are being stimulated all over when we're listening to music. Even the physicality of tapping your foot. Amazing.
Front and the back, the inside and the outside.
So what about a musician's brain?
To play a piece of music engages so many things: motor systems, timing systems, memory systems, hearing system. There's all sorts of kind of brain activity happening. It's a very robust thing to play music.
I'm Alex Jacob Robertson. I'm Nathan Glenn Robertson.
We asked these 11-year-old musicians to tell us what's going through their minds when they play.
Some of the most important things are having good postures, getting the note right, legato, staccato. For the violin, you need to hold your hand at the right place, and you need to be in tune. And then you also have to have not only the right intonation, but the right sound. And then you also need to have great vibrato. There's a lot of things to think about.
Back at USC, researchers have been studying kids who play music over the past 5 years to see how it affects their development. The multitasking areas of their brains understandably lit up, but they've seen other results too.
Music training over the course of 5 years has had benefits in cognitive skills and decision making, also had some benefits in social behavior, and we've also seen changes in the social brain structures.
Did you hear that? Changes in brain structures. They found that the brains of children who have studied music have stronger connections between the right and left hemispheres, and that can make them better, more creative problem solvers. And then there's emotion. When you hear a piece like this, it's easy to understand why emotions play such a big part in music. This song, by Camille Saint-Saëns, is known as the music for the dying swan in ballet. And while it might move ballerinas to dance, it inspires different reactions in others. Some people get goosebumps, chills, that weird tingly sensation that you get when a great piece of music just hits you in the right way. It's called frisson, and not everyone gets it. But it turns out I do.
Now we're going to have you listen to some pieces of music. When you experience a chill, if you do, I want you to just press the spacebar to give an indication of when the sort of peak moments of enjoyment.
Matt Sachs, a PhD candidate at USC, wired me up to measure my physiological response.
So when I'm feeling that kind of emotional connection that has a physical manifestation, you see what my body is actually doing.
Exactly.
I put on my deodorant and I feel comfortable and protected.
And yet a commercial pops on.
Right, so that had a lot of
You got them all.
Now, full disclosure, back in the day, I played the cello, which might have something to do with why that particular song affected me. Nice hair. But it turns out the brain is at work here too.
We process the difference between this pathway that connects the auditory regions, which is on the side of the brain here, to the emotional regions, and we show that the tract actually that connects those two regions is stronger, there's more fibers in that region than people would get shown.
Which means some people's brains might have better communication between what they hear and how they feel. The music itself also plays a role in frisson. Sachs uses different songs in his lectures to see if students get it.
I'll say raise your hand when you get a show and I'll play a piece of music, a classical piece, and maybe half the people will get it.
Then he plays this. Rolling Stones' Gimme Shelter.
Have you ever seen the movie 20 Feet from Stardom?
Oh, about backup singers.
Yeah. There's a part where they isolate the vocals from Gimme Shelter. And I play that at 90% experience chills, sort of independent of where I go.
I have to tell you, bring that up when you think about it, and I got that little kind of thing at the back of my neck.
But why would that happen?
The high-pitched notes that she hit almost sounds like a scream, and it's very important ancestrally for us to be able to pay attention to a scream, figure out what's going on, and either run or fight, whatever we need to do.
So how come that manifests as pleasure? Well, it's because our prefrontal cortex, the more rational thinking part of the brain, kicks in.
So you realize very quickly after you have this really quick startle reflex that there's nothing actually threatening about the piece of music, that you're sitting in a safe space with your headphones on, and it's in that reappraisal that we tend to think of the pleasurable responses emerging.
And whether you find listening to music so pleasurable you get chills, or you absolutely despise a song, it can produce absolutely fascinating effects in the brain. According to Levitin, the music we enjoy triggers the brain's internal opioid system. Yes, opioid system. And just like the opioids that come in pill form, these chemicals make you feel good and help relieve pain. And music you don't like, well, that releases cortisol, the notorious stress hormone. But that's not even the half of what music can do in the brain.
Turn on the light.
When former Congresswoman Gabrielle Gifford was shot in 2011, the left side of her brain was severely damaged, leaving her struggling to speak, a condition called aphasia. But to get an idea of just how powerful music's effect on the brain can be, watch this video.
You ready?
That word that she had been struggling to say, light, came easily in song.
Why would she be able to sing a word when she's unable to sing?
What we know about the brain is that the left hemisphere controls language, and there are many other parts of the brain that have music access.
Music therapist Megan Morrow's job is to help patients use those other pathways to regain language.
Sometimes I compare it to being in traffic and you can't move any further, but you might need to exit and take a feeder road to get you to your destination. So music is basically like that feeder road to the new destination.
There are some people who have suffered from the COVID-19 and been put into a coma, and when they awake many weeks later, they suffer like this woman did. And the thing that helps them is music therapy. That's one of the many therapies, occupational therapy and speech therapy, that they have. But it's amazing that the human mind can remember songs from so long ago and help them speak again.
Like a detour. So we know that music can help us relearn things like speech by accessing alternative pathways in the brain, and that learning to play music can help strengthen brain connections. But what about making music?
To me, music is like, it's the language of humanity. No matter where I go in the world, if I'm playing something, it doesn't matter if someone can't speak the language. If they're into it, they're into it.
This is Xavier DeFrepolis, better known as Fantastic Negrito. We brought him to UCSF to meet Charles Lim, a neuroscientist who studies musical creativity.
The Duffler's up next.
To understand how Fantastic Negrito's brain works when he's making music, Dr. Lim had him play one of his songs while going through the fMRI. So how did his brain respond? The areas that process sensory and motor skills, along with sounds, lit up. You can see them here, in red and yellow. Makes sense, right? But here's the really interesting part. Lim asked him to improvise, to see what happens when he's creating something totally original.
Like Star Wars hit my head. It's like Star Wars hit my head. I don't like this crazy sound. Makes me feel like I can't get it down.
Now watch what happens to his brain. The areas that were active before, the ones that deal with motor skills and sounds, are even more active. But see how there's way more blue in the front of his brain? That's the prefrontal cortex, and it's associated with effortful planning and conscious self-monitoring. And it's blue because it's less active.
We see that the prefrontal cortex appears to be really shutting down in these moments of high creativity, kind of like letting go of these conscious self-censoring or self-monitoring areas that normally are there to help control that output.
And Lynn says it's about more than just letting go.
You view it from the perspective of survival. If human beings only could do memorized rote responses, we'd be long gone. And it's not just the thing that happens in clubs and jazz bars. It's actually maybe the most fundamental form of what it means to be human, about what the idea.
So think about our ancestors long ago who lived primitive lives, and when they finally could conquer fire, it gave them more time awake. Prior to that, they'd have to cower together, maybe in a cave, no fire, no light during the nighttime, hiding from predators. But once they were able to create fire, they were able to sit around that fire, gain warmth, language developed, they started talking, they started creating art on the walls that we can see in our history books, and if we're ever fortunate enough to go to the places where they have wall art. And then they began telling stories around these fires, and that's where the imagination began to grow. And the more we spoke, the more we created, the more human we became. And then music evolved eventually, singing, and then learning how to make tempo and noise with other objects. So music and creating art and creating literature brings us to a higher plane in our brains, mentally.
In whichever, trying to find.
So, music is so much more than notes on a page. It can change the way we think and speak and feel. But is there a limit to what science can tell us about music?
Just when I discover the answer to one thing, 5 new questions pop up that are more interesting than the first. And I gained an appreciation for how complex the music making and music listening system is. It's not demystified for me. It's more mysterious than ever.
La la la, la la la, la la la, la la la. People.
So hopefully you've gained some insight into us as humans and why it's so important that we find some kind of music that we enjoy. And this is why I ask you for your first project to be something that maybe you would find of interest, which is your favorite song. Now, of course, it has to be G-rated, so it's not necessarily your favorite song of all time, but your favorite G-rated song. So here's my favorite G-rated song, as you know. It is Virgin Islands Nice by the singer Pressure. So the project that you're going to be doing that is due on Thursday or Friday is a Google slide show that answers certain questions that you have the handout for in Google Classroom. And it's also an essay. So the slides, the first thing is, I'd like to know your personal response to this song. Why is the song you chose so important to you? And of course, you do something like this. You'll say this song is about whatever your song is about. Mine happens to be about the United States Virgin Islands and its history. And of course, that makes it important to me because my family is from the Virgin Islands. My grandparents designed and sewed the first flag of the Virgin Islands, and I was raised there. So for me, hearing this song brings back memories of hearing about how this flag was designed. I lived with my grandmother most of my childhood and heard stories about my great-grandmother, and I knew my Aunt Blanche and my granny, but I didn't know most of her other siblings. This is her other older sister, Edna. So when I hear that song, all of these memories come whooshing forward. And the people who went before me, I begin to feel like I am connected to them, because most of all of these people are now gone. This is my grandmother when she was a young lady. This is my mom. They look a lot alike. And then this is my grandmother and my mom and my sister and one of my cousins. And of course, here are my grandparents together and my parents together. And my parents didn't stay married very long. They were married about 12 years. And so they divorced when I was 3 years old. So here's my sister, here I am, here's my mom, here's my granny, myself, my dad, and my stepmother, who I love very much. She even came down to St. Thomas to see the Virgin Islands because I talked about it so much when I was little. She wanted to see it for herself. So the song brings back all those feelings and reminds me of all the people and the good times that I had there. So then you're going to put the lyrics on your slides. Now, mine, the lyrics couldn't fit on just one. So as you can see, the smallest size would be 36. I wanted to be sure that you could see it and I can see yours. So the key meaning of my song, it mentions St. Thomas, St. John, and St. Croix, and those are these islands which encompass the U.S. Virgin Islands. It talks about how even though we're just a few square, and he assumes you understand that means miles, I personally travel around the world and I have Virgin Islands pride. So here's a view of the harbor in St. Thomas. And then the lyrics continue. Virgin Islands teachers, nobody raises a fool. We remember the history of the islands. And we were great people. Knowing this is a great value to us. So here's Queen Mary. This is a statue that is actually in Denmark, which is the country that owned us the longest and the most before the United States. And so she led a rebellion against slavery. And then here is Edward Blyden, and he was a native from St. Thomas, and he began to want more. He became a preacher, and so he decided that he wanted to return to Africa. He had a vision of Africa, and he's one of the ones who went to live eventually in Liberia, which was a country started by African Americans who wanted to go back home to Africa. And then in St. John, there was another person who led a rebellion against slavery and wanted emancipation for the slaves, and he was known as General Bud Ho. And so here is his statue, and they were successful. So the lyrics continue, and they talk about how St. Thomas is sweet and nice, so very nice. So, we have Carnival in March every year, and you have troops that go through. We have children's parades, we have adult parades. It's quite wonderful. And St. Thomas is sweet and nice. St. Croix, which is the largest of the 3 islands, is full of pure vibes, so nice. And St. John is a real paradise. So St. John is one of the tinier islands, and it has been labeled as a national paradise. It can only a small portion of St. John can be built on, because the person who owned the island was Rockefeller, one of the billionaires from the United States, and he gave back the island to the people of the islands if they kept it as like a national forest, so that everyone could enjoy it in the future. So again, never raise a fool. The islands are so nice. And then in this same song, we have a recognition of some famous people from the islands, like a band which is named Midnight. and a boxer who's Julian Jackson. He was a champion in the ring. This is him when he was young, and this is him nowadays, currently. And he has 3 sons who also are boxers. And then there's Tim Duncan, who was from the Virgin Islands. He's from St. Croix, and he's one of the greatest basketball players. He played for the Spurs. So, you know, we're very proud of those who leave the islands and become successful and happy. And so St. Thomas, St. Croix, St. John, the United States Virgin Islands, so nice. So that kind of tells you about the reasoning of why the song means something to me, and it also shows you the lyrics with some clip art. And then I also told you that you do need to tell me the facts of the song, like who is the artist who performs the song, and so it's Pressure. What was the year that it was released? What is the genre? Reggae. And the music was produced by Zion First Kings, who wrote the song. It was recorded by whom? See, this is his real name, Pressure. And it was mixed by him and this company. And it was mastered. You know, they make master tapes here in Florida. So it's not super difficult, the PowerPoint. Few slides that go over each of those points that I showed you in the handout, which is available in Google Classroom. And then you're going to type or handwrite, but it might be easier for everyone to type it, 400 words minimum. 400 words minimum. And you're just going to write an essay. And the introduction is just a short little, you know, intro about the song itself, like a little report, you know, with the details of it that you covered in that slide that we just were talking about. So that's your introduction, of course, and an introduction always ends with a thesis. So that's your personal response. Why is the song important to you? So you end your first paragraph with, this song is important or significant to me because, and you tell your reasons. And of course, we usually have 3 good reasons. I'd like for you to, somewhere in your reasons, give your interpretation about what does the song mean, the significance of the lyrics, you know, good writing, the poetic language, like the song that I chose kept repeating, so nice, explaining that the islands are just so awesome. So this you'll upload into Google Docs if it's typed. And if you come to school face-to-face, you don't have to type it. You can handwrite it. But remember, spelling, punctuation, and grammar are important. So it might be easier to type it and just upload it into Google Classroom. So at this time, I would like for you to turn to your 3rd section of your 3-subject spiral, language arts. And I'm going to pause this to see if there's any questions regarding our project from anyone who's home or anyone who's present. So I'm going to just pause the video. Okay, so in your 3-subject spiral, in the last section, which is headed Language Arts, I want you to draw a line between the last word that you defined. So the first word we had was genre, and we put the definition. And the second word we had, or literary term that we had, was theme. And now we're going to have public speaking. Public speaking. So take a moment and write down number 3, public speaking. And I want you to copy the definition into your spiral. It will be on the next slide. I'm just going to pause this for a moment as you write down public speaking. Okay, so the definition for public speaking is: public speaking combines picking a topic, see up here, topic. Researching that topic. Making a plan once you have your information. Making a plan for what you're going to say about that topic. And figuring out your audience. You're going to speak differently to adults than you will to a kindergarten class, of course. Then, as you are writing, you're going to pick a phrase that you might want to incorporate in your speech. Such as, so nice in the song. Or, as in Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech. He repeatedly said, I have a dream. I have a dream. Okay. Once you've done that, you're going to actually write what you're going to say. You're going to write a speech. And once you have it the way you want it, and it's perfect, you're going to practice your speech. Not so that you memorize it, but so that you're comfortable when you're saying it. So practicing your speech, and then once you get comfortable with the information that you're going to say, you're going to make eye contact when you actually give your speech with your audience. So these are the 8 parts of public speaking. Notice that I made them a little bold for you. Topic, researching, plan, audience, phrase, speech, practicing, eye contact. So you should have all of that. I'm going to pause it so that everyone has an opportunity to write the definition at their pace. And we're going to watch 2 videos. We're going to watch a vocabulary called Public Speaking. And then we're going to watch the video of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. giving his I Have a Dream speech. So let's go up here. And we're going to watch this video first, just to remind you what public speaking should entail. Hopefully it won't be too loud.
Vocabulary, give me some. I need you to give me a speech. Now, why would I speak to just one? I could give a speech to a crowd, that's more fun. First I plan, that's the ticket. On what topic will I kick it? I do research, get the info. Somewhere between complex and simple. I think about who is the audience. That'll change my speech, it's obvious. I would not deliver the same speech to a lion king and to a flock of sheep. Use note cards, they're handy. They're little, like candy. Put your notes in the order that's strong, so the whole crowd can follow along. Start with something that really pops to capture their attention from the top. You could use a phrase again and again, like I have a dream, from beginning to end. That'll let it sink in like water and dirt. Better practice that speech and put in the work, yeah. You better spit it like 25 times to get better like a veteran with veteran lines. Do like I. You think I spit it just once? Nuh-uh. This is take number 71. Come on. I give a speech and the people freak. I breathe like a yogi easily. I speak so clearly, speak so loud. Speak like a boss cause I slow it down. I give a speech and the people freak. I breathe like a yogi easily. I speak so clearly, speak so loud. Speak like a boss cause I slowed it down. Practice in front of the mirror, in front of your friends, in front of your family, then do it again. Consider a prop, that's a visual aid. It should support what you have to say. Okay, now it's speech time. Breathe easy, you're gonna be fine. Your confidence will be contagious. Put the kibosh on the haters. Go ahead, stand tall and proud. Speak clearly and be loud. Make eye contact here and there. Look around, but you don't really have to stare. And don't read your notes word for word, unless you're speaking with a teleprompter. Follow most of these tips at least, and you'll be a beast to give it a speech. I give a speech and the people freak. I breathe like a yogi easily. I speak so clearly, speak so loud. Speak like a boss cause I slowed it down. it easily. I speak so clearly, speak so loud, speak like a boss cause I slowed it down.
Okay. So the prop that you'll use with your speech will be your PowerPoint. Now you can only imagine how nervous Dr. King must have been to give this speech back in the 1960s when he gave it, and he went to Washington, D.C. Last Friday, the 28th, was the 57th anniversary of the march on Washington and his I Have a Dream speech. So I'd like for you to listen to this and just imagine being there and witnessing this powerful speech. Boy, they keep throwing in these commercials on me. I let it lag too long. Okay, here we got another commercial. Good heavenly day. All right, we're going to skip these ads. Here we go.
King, Jr. And to you, Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr.
I am happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation. Five score years ago, a great American in whose symbolic shadow we stand today signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree came as a great beacon light of hope to millions of Negro slaves.
I'm going to pause it, and I'm going to pause my recording, but I'm going to ask, who was the person who signed the Emancipation Proclamation, and how many years ago was it from the time of the speech? Just going to scooch it back a little. He said 5 score years ago. A score is 20 years. Keep that in mind. So how long ago? This speech was in 1963. How many years before 1963 did this great American sign the Emancipation Proclamation? Okay. I'm glad that we figured out who that was. And the fact that you could do the math for 5 score years ago. He could have just said what? He could have just said 100 years ago, and he could have just said the man's name. But he was using poetic license with this speech to make it more powerful.
Today, signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree came as a great beacon light of hope to millions of Negro slaves who had been seared in the flames of withering injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak to end the long night of their captivity. But 100 years later, the Negro still is not free. 100 years later, the life of the Negro is still sadly crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination.
We have to wonder, has it changed today? We're talking 57 years later. Have things gotten better so that all men and women in the United States are equal?
100 years later, the Negro lives on a lonely island of poverty. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will they be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream. My four little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day, down in Alabama, with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification. One day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted. And every hill and mountain shall be made low, the rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight, and the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope. This is the faith that I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. This will be the day when all of God's children be able to sing with new meaning, my country tears of thee. Sweet land of liberty of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrims cry. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. And so let freedom ring. From the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire, let freedom ring. From the mighty mountains of New York, let freedom ring. From the heightening Alleghenies of Pennsylvania, let freedom ring. From the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado, let freedom ring. From the curvaceous slopes of California. But not only that, let freedom ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi, from every mountainside. Let freedom ring in Windy Capital. When we allow freedom ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Gentiles, Protestants, and Catholics will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at
So, let freedom ring. That was another of his repeated cries. When you are thinking about your own speech, try to think about what it is with the song you choose that makes it special, and let that be your repetitive phrase. Just like So Nice, just like I Have a Dream, just like Let Freedom Ring. And I hope that during our lifetime, we will find a time when racism is finished, when every place is as nice as the Virgin Islands and everyone can feel equal, and there won't be needs for any more of these rallies like the one on the right side of this picture, of this slide, because the one on the left was 1963 and the one on the right is August 28th, 2020. So let's work together to make our school, Athenian Academy, one where everybody feels like they matter and they're important and they are respected. We'll have a little class discussion and you can work on your writing. Whew. Task. This end task. Whew. Put you away. Minimize.